Hello everyone, this is part 23 of What If Naruto Was Like Edward Elric in Fullmetal Alchemist, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Hinata watched Naruto disappear as she sat back up. Let's clean this up before he gets back then, she thought and began cleaning the table. She was just done and made some tea as she heard someone walk on the stairs. Obviously Naruto wanted her to look because, well, they were shinobi. They walked around the home for a few days now and never the staircase squeaked until now. Hinata turned her head and her jaw almost fell to the ground. Naruto walked inside the bedroom where he found 3 clones sitting in a circle waiting for him. He nodded and they all walked to the closet. One opened it up and walked in first, the rest followed him in. It was a huge closet with many boots, shoes and other footwear. On the left side there were many different styled coats and jackets as well as some chunin vests and anbu gear. On the right side there were more ceremonial sets and on the far end of the right side there was another door. But at the end in the middle there was one piece that stood out. It was a manke that had the Hokage's official robes and hat on it. A small beam of light from a tiny gap in the wall gave it a special spotlight and it almost screamed out to be worn. Naruto then opened the small door on the side. A long mirror shoved itself out of it and covered the full back wall as it had one hook at the top with a robe on it, the white with red flames on the bottom robe from Yondaime. Hinata sank to her knees as 4 Narutos walked into the room. The first was wearing a full anbu gear complete with the traditional sword and mask. The second wore the standard Chunin gear complete with the vest one receives at reaching Chunin rank, only he also wore the long white with red flamed cloak. The last one almost made her snap. Naruto walked down graciously as he wore a Hokage outfit. He sat down in front of Hinata with the 2 clones on his sides and grabbed a cup of tea as he slowly drank like nothing happened. Hinata busted into laughter and Naruto looked up with a huge grin on his face. Finally noticed. He smiled even more broadly as he put his cup down and stood up. Come on, I'll show you. He took her hand and walked her up to the room. They arrived in the master bedroom and Naruto pointed to the closet that stood open. She looked inside and saw his father's wardrobe. Before she could take a good look he closed it. A bright sun shined on them as they stood atop of the Hokage tower. They walked a bit towards the edge as soon as stopped them. Let me go first, I'll see if all is ready, she said as she walked towards one of the pillars. An anbu member appeared out of the shadow of it and whispered her something. He then gave her a small microphone and gave Naruto a slight look before he disappeared into the shadow of the pillar again. Tsunade walked up to the edge as she looked at the crowd. A great sound blew up as almost every person in the village screamed. It took a few moments but she finally managed to ease them down and the loud noise went to a slight whispering. She turned on the microphone and began to talk. Good afternoon everyone and thank you that you could all gather here on such a short notice. I assume most of you are curious to who the new clan will be and some of you will already know. I have to apologize to, especially the younger people among you, since the 4th Hokage the 3rd Hokage made a slight change in the history books and everything. Laws were made to prevent anyone to explaining this and other things to you all. She looked over the crowd and smiled as she saw many faces in astonishment or some elder people even afraid of what she was about to tell. The fact is, this whole village was once, before it even was named, the land of one clan. The clan had the most influence and even one of their leaders was Hokage once. He was the 4th. She kept silent for a moment as she heard the whole crowd gasp. During the Great War his clan was almost wiped out except for him and his wife. Another silence fell and Tsunade could almost feel half of the crowd burst from curiosity. I cannot explain the exact reason why the 3rd made these rules but it was to protect the son of Yondaime, for Yondaime was leader of his own clan, and now, I present to you, his only son, the newest Chunin of our village and our honorable clan head that is even acknowledged as a great friend by the Kazekage, Uzumaki Naruto. She yelled out and pushed Naruto and Hinata onto the edge. A great silence fell. After precisely 4 seconds a huge explosion of sounds burst from the crowd as most of Konoha screamed and yelled for their new head and the others just cheered for him. Naruto stood there for a while, Hinata on his left arm, both blushing a light red while Tsunade gave him a small pat on the shoulder. Tsunade waited for the cheering, yelling and screaming to cool down a bit. Uzumaki Naruto, many of you know him, some of you will probably despise him for something he is not. I can't order any of you to like him, but I can say this. Since yesterday around noon, Naruto was promoted to clan leader as he and his she gave Naruto a quick look and he nodded in understanding, and his soon-to-be wife Hyuga Hinata were both promoted from Genin to Junin in a special exam they did. He earns the respect and acknowledgement from every single one of you, and his clan shall be reintroduced into our history books, and the original rules about him and his clan shall be given out on several points, but that will come later on. She smiled as the whole crowd cheered once more and she handed Naruto the microphone. Naruto waited a bit and the cheering went down again. I stand here today, in front of all of you, with the love of my life by my side. I've never expected it to be like this, nor would I think that it would be embraced like this. He smiled and continued. A few days ago I heard of my history and was promoted to Junin and received the lure of clan leader. I found the old clan house and I discovered many things about the Uzumakis, such as our symbols that became symbols Konoha used for its own. I will try to do my best for Konoha and hope you will all, one day, know me as a friend. He finished and sealed it with a smile and a slight K on Hinata's forehead as the crowd went wild. Tsunade pulled them back and smiled endlessly while she led them to the front door where 4 Anbu stood in a square waiting for them to escort them. They opened the door and the crowd formed a path. With the 4 Anbu escorting them, they headed down towards the path. Many people yelled and asked them questions, but the Anbu kept responding that he'd have time for that later on. After some time they passed Gaara. They stopped and he made a step forward. Congratulations, I see you've attained something you wished for long ago. He said them both as he gave Naruto a hand and made a slight bow. Just remember that you are always welcome in Suna. He gave a slight nod and stepped back into the crowd. Naruto and Hinata walked on while Tsunade tailed them. After a few streets, Tsunade came closer and gave Naruto a tap on the shoulder. Tonight you're expected to be at the Jasmine Dragon. Several important people will be there and we will discuss the growth of your clan. I expect the both of you to be there at 8 sharp, she whispered as he nodded. The walk continued for a few minutes before they ended at one of the tea houses nearby and stopped to sit down. Several friends joined them and Sakura sat down right in front of them. So, Naruto, now that you proposed to Hinata, when are you two going to have the wedding? She smiled broadly as the couple blushed slightly. We haven't made plans yet, but it can't be too soon for me. Hinata suddenly spoke and with a firm voice she declared it. They ordered something to drink and more friends joined the table. They pulled more chairs to them and soon it was a big circle. So, now that you have your own clan, what will you do? One asked as Naruto took a nip from his tea. I guess I'll need to find more members some way or another, but I'll see about that later. Naruto smiled broadly as he looked at Hinata. Some guys laughed and Hinata grew a slight blush on her face. They laughed and talked the coming hour until it was time to go, and Naruto and Hinata decided to take a long walk before they went for the Jasmine Dragon. And so they walked for an hour or two, sat on a bench in the park for some time, and most of the time they met people that were curious about them and wanted to talk to them. Hinata was fast asleep and Naruto tried not to wake her while freeing himself from her grasp, which of course tightened it. After about an hour of hard discipline she finally let go of him a bit and then she rolled over. It took him less than 10 minutes to get back to sleep and try to get the 2.5 hours back into his system. Wait a minute, I never told you that. He looked down at Hinata and she had a sinister look on her face. A small bird told me, she said with an innocent face. They both laughed a bit and finally Naruto pushed her up as she protested but complied. They walked into the direction of the center of the village and it took them less than half an hour to get to the Jasmine Dragon. There they found several servants sitting in a small cafe across the street and Gaara was just walking up to them with Matsuri next to him, both in the same sets as at the party. They greeted each other and walked inside together where they heard a voice call out for them. They turned to the left and saw a long table that was set up as a U form where many men and women of high positions in the village sat and some they didn't recognize. At the 5-chaired head sat Tsunade with 2 empty chairs on each side. She waved him over. Naruto sat down next to Tsunade's left. On his left sat Hinata and on Tsunade's right side Gaara and Matsuri sat down. They talked a bit until the last person joined the table and Tsunade stood up. Welcome, welcome, I summoned all of you here so that we can discuss the future plans of the Uzumaki clan. It is normally assumed that a clan will be made out of direct family, marriage or adoption. Naruto and Hinata have yet to set the date but will definitely marry in the upcoming year. Tsunade gave them a small look and they nodded back before she continued. But a clan that exists out of a mere 2 or, if I may say so, 3 members, is not a real clan. Hinata blushed a bit and most of the men laughed. I say we should make it an option for Naruto to let people join his clan, and thus his family, if they are willing to do so for 1 year, to make a start. Mostly it is not possible to take in Hinata's family into their clan, as you can all see she is one of the Hyuga. She paused for a moment and let everyone overthink her words while she took a slight nip of her sake. A slight whispering crossed the room and soon changed into low talking as the new look on the creation or expansion of a clan was considered. Most were enthusiastic, but of course there were a few that doubted it and preferred to stick with tradition. Everyone talked about the matter until a special dressed waiter walked up to the middle of the U form and announced, "Dinner is served," as 2 big doors in the back of the room flew open and a small army walked out of them. Waiters walked around the table with food dishes and placed them on carefully selected spots while they removed the covers. There were many different foods from simple sushi to lobster to even a few large cooked birds. Several bottles of wine and sake were placed and Tsunade had trouble not to grab the nearest sake bottle for herself. The dinner was delicious and they discussed many possibilities on how or what to do with the clan. Some suggested to let another family join them, but Naruto didn't want to, as it would be just a family that gained his name, but they would keep their own traditions. Eventually the food was gone and they just drank when they came to a conclusion. The first idea from the Hokage would be maintained. The Hokage decided that the meeting was over and one by one the people left. Naruto and Hinata left and went to their home again. I wonder where she is, he thought as he got up and walked downstairs. He went into the kitchen and prepared a basic meal. After the meal he sent a clone to clean up the mess and went to the training house. "Let's see what I can make of this," he said out loud as he checked all the equipment and special things. He tried out several different approaches and finally he just ended up fighting clones and target dummies with his special training gear on. After about an hour he stopped and went for a quick jump in the water. The water was relaxing but he couldn't keep his mind off of Hinata. Just what was she doing? After half an hour he left the warm water and changed into his normal black training outfit. He went to the library to find a clone waiting for him with a sealed large scroll. He found it in a small hidden spot on the desk in the middle of the chamber. Naruto tried to open it but it was stuck. Trough ninjutsu. He checked the symbols and easily found the special Uzumaki scroll that contained sealing and releasing jutsus for their family, as he tried several that were similar. After about 15 minutes he finally found the right one and the scroll opened. Naruto smiled wider by the second as he read what was in the scroll: the Flying Thunder God technique. The scroll fully explained his father's legendary technique. The seal on the kunai or enemy or wherever he wanted to teleport to, as well as the seals needed for the jutsu. He found that it was a complicated combination but surprisingly required very little chakra. The only side effect was that he would have to be able to get to great speeds before he could even attempt to teleport, as it was actually more like moving so fast that you can't even notice it yourself, and thus you concentrate on a specific spot where to stop, nothing more, and the special seal helped with it, making it possible to get out of this high speed. Naruto laughed out loud while he continued to read. There were some hints on using special kunai to increase the chance of success and even a theory in his father's handwriting of how to do it with simpler, faster, or even, if trained enough, with just concentration and the right single seal. But according to the notes he didn't have the time and suddenly the notes ended. Must have been around the time he sealed the QB in me, Naruto thought as he felt his stomach. He took the scroll down and went to the chamber with all weapons and armor in it. He soon found the special kunai his father used and tried them out. They were a bit lighter and probably made from stronger material, but they were at least 20 years old and not used for the last 19 years, so he packed them all up and brought the scroll back to its hidden spot in the desk, sealing both the scroll and the door. He went to the front door and left a small M for Hinata that he was out to town. He grabbed his black coat and put on his sandals and made it to the village. On his way off the village he found that, instead of the normal walk where he'd always received silent stares from everyone, he was greeted by most people and some girls even blushed as he walked by. I'm beginning to like this, he happily though as he walked past many shops and places. He ended up at the place he wanted to, a blacksmith that was specialized in weapons, once the student of the great master weaponsmith where he and Hinata delivered the weapon request from Tenten. He went in and a young boy came to him. Good afternoon Uzumaki-sama, is there anything I can help you with? He smiled slightly and had a brown apron and simple blacksmithing clothing on. Ah, yes, I've come to see your master, can I speak with him? Of course, if you'd follow me, he suggested while he turned around and walked into the back of the place. A man of about 40 years age stood in the back as he was reading something. Next to him was a red glowing spear point. Gumen, sensei, we have someone who wishes to talk to you, the boy said, and the giant man turned around. He held a long letter and looked as if he'd just had a taste of heaven. Ah, I see, Uzumaki Naruto, isn't it? The man smiled as he laid down the letter and walked up to Naruto. He rubbed his hand clean and shook Naruto's hand firmly as he made a small bow. I think I know why you are here, the old man smiled as Naruto grabbed the bag. Let me guess, it has something to do with your father's twin swords or his kunai. The man sat down on a small bench and smiled broadly. How do you know? Naruto replied as he showed him the kunai, old and rusty yet sharp to the point. 28 years ago I began this shop, and just a few years after that your father came to me with the request to repair 2 swords. I'll tell you this, they were the best swords I've ever seen, sharper than anything and stronger than the hardest steel. Unfortunately, I couldn't fix them and I had to send him to my old master. He could fix them. The man smiled as Naruto pulled out the 2 swords that were, after all these years, still in perfect condition. I think it was about 7 years after I opened my shop that I met him again. It was late and I sat in a simple sake bar when he already was there and drinking. He was very depressed and kept talking on and on about something being impossible, lack of concentration and a point of destination. The boy came in with 2 cups of tea and stood near them to listen to the story. After more drinks we both became a little drunk and began talking. He mentioned some new jutsu he'd been working on but it didn't work. The man smiled as he took out one of the kunai that Naruto brought. He said the normal kunai were to, well to normal, and that he needed something special, so I told him to come by the next day. Several weeks later I met him on the street and he literally jumped from happiness. He had remembered the talk but forgotten with who, so he was even more depressed. We went directly to my shop and he showed me the design of a kunai like this. The man held the kunai up and gave his apprentice a nod as he showed him the masterpiece. We adjusted it slightly for better results in combat and then we picked the finest metals that we could find, and this was the result. Every few years he ordered some more and it was a good income since the metals he wanted were rare and expensive and it needed me and several apprentices to work on it for a week to make a complete set. The man smiled broadly, knowing what was about to come. I assume you can make me a set of these within the next 2 weeks. Naruto smiled as he stood up. Why? Of course I can, Uzumaki-sama. Is there anything else you'd wish for? The man wrote something down and gave the note to his apprentice who ran off. Actually, yes, I've got an idea to improve the effectivity of the jutsu. My father placed a special seal on them, but if I can be here when they are forged, is it possible that you can engrave them with a seal while I infuse the metal with chakra and a special jutsu when it's fluid? The man thought for a moment and then he smiled broadly. I'll send someone to get you when the moment arrives. By the way, make them the best you've ever made. Payment is not a problem. Naruto gave the man a hand and left the shop. Tsunade walked into her office and sat down. She sighed seeing her desk was once again filled with paperwork. Can't you use the door just once? She called out and Jiraiya appeared before the window. Now why would I do that? He said with a big smile while he opened it and sat down on a chair. Did I hear correct about Naruto becoming a Junin? He smiled broadly as he snapped a bottle of sake from her desk. You shouldn't be drinking during work, you know, he said with an innocent voice while he turned the bottle around above his mouth. I don't, I already finished that one before I got here. She smiled back at him with a threatening grin. Alright, now what happened? I heard that he got the news that he has a clan. So Tsunade told him all about what happened and the upcoming wedding. She went on the whole time except when she told about Naruto and Hinata. He couldn't help but laugh hard. So I reckon I'll have to wait a bit before we return to our training, Jiraiya said while he walked back to the window. I think that, perhaps, he doesn't even has time for training, seeing that 2 months are already gone, another will be needed for the wedding and don't forget the honeymoon. But don't worry, they defeated an elite team of swordsmen, and some of them they even made a joke of by soloing them where even some of their teachers would have asked for assistance. She made a grin while he reopened the door. Alright, here is the report of the mission. Those guys were a joke but surprisingly strong. He threw a small scroll on her table before he jumped out. Naruto walked Trough Town and still couldn't believe it. Everywhere he looked or turned, people greeted him. One girl even asked him out. Blushing like mad, he turned her down before anyone could see it. He never thought of it like that, but he was a muscled man that was almost 20, leader of a clan and one of the strongest junin of the village. He went for a cup of tea and relaxed while he went trough for things that he needed to do. He had to go to Tsunade for something, find out where Hinata went and go to the jeweler to pick up her gift. Tsunade it is then, he said while he stood up and went into an ally. Come in, a voice was heard from the office as he knocked on the door. I'm glad that Hinata got some sense into you. Tsunade smiled quickly to Naruto before she continued with her paperwork. Please sit down, what do you need? Actually, I just need to know something, Naruto said while he sat down on the couch. I was thinking, but how can I become clan leader while I will marry another clan leader? Tsunade looked up and laughed. Was it Jiraiya or Hinata that made you smart? Or was it just the time that slipped by? She laughed some more while she pushed a pile of paper to the side. Actually, we got rules for this. In case of two actual leaders in love or marriage, one need to end his life with one clan and begin with the other. But in your case, Hinata isn't leader yet. There are two options. She could discuss the next leader with her clan, or she could just appoint someone as her second. The clan may have troubles with it, but if you want to, she can have my support. Naruto thought about this for a moment and then smiled. I think we don't need that. She always saw as Neji as a brother and her father is seeing him as a son. He is older than her and is the so-called genius of the Hyuga. If there is someone who can lead their clan, it's him. Naruto smiled broadly while he sat straight up. I see. Now, about something else, do you have any plans so far about the wedding? Tsunade looked up to Naruto and smiled. He looked away and blushed a bit. You do have a date planned, right? Tsunade looked at Naruto before she buried her face in her hands. I thought you wanted to marry her, right? Of course I do. Naruto stood up angrily. Tsunade leaned back onto her chair and smiled. Then go find your girl and plan something, you fool. She smiled even broadly while he rushed out of the door, just managing to scream a goodbye. Naruto flashed trough the village with great speed. People only saw a faint black shadow with a gust of wind passed by all around the village. Lee was running laps when he saw the shadow pass by and tried to keep up, but was no match unless he would release his weights. Naruto ran trough the village and went by all the central points and shopping places but couldn't find Hinata. Suddenly an arm grabbed him by the sea and he was pulled back into sight and away from the shadowy stream he was in. After a few seconds, realizing that he suddenly stopped, he looked to whom this arm belonged. Kakashi sat on a tree and saw the shadow approach in the distance. He moved his headband and saw a flash of Naruto's face. He placed the band before his eye again and held out an arm. Suddenly a great force rammed into him and he was pushed off the tree, breaking a street pole on his way. Finally he managed to stop and held Naruto by his shoulders. Why were you in such a hurry? He smiled beneath his mask and poked Naruto on his head. Hey Kakashi-sensei, I need to find Hinata, know where she is. Naruto managed to say between some heavy panting. He was running Trough Town for about a minute or 5 now, and because of the speed, every time he tried to breathe he felt like a hammer landed on his sea. I know where she isn't, Kakashi happily replied while he looked around for his beloved book that he lost somewhere during the fall. Alright, I have to go again then, bye. He tried to break free but Kakashi wouldn't let him. Say, since you're going to marry soon, shouldn't you have a bachelor party? Naruto stopped breaking free and looked at the ground for a moment. Alright, I'll see to it I guess, now can you let me go? I really need to find Hinata. Naruto started to get annoyed now. Yes, but first we need to plan your party. Let's see, we should have at least a large amount of sake. Oh, and don't forget the women, we need women at your party. Kakashi sat down and stared up dreamingly. Naruto took this opportunity to sneak off and a block away he began running again. Hinata sat down together with Sakura, Tenten and Ino. They were planning all morning on the wedding and every now and then Sakura and Ino had an argument about the smallest things, yet things seemed to be almost done. A waiter came with 4 cups and a teapot. I still think we should take pink to purple flowers, Sakura said with a firm voice. You can think whatever you want but they will be white. Ino scolded back as she grabbed her tea, almost breaking the stone cup. I'll take white mixed with purple, we agreed on that half an hour ago, Hinata stated with a smile. Suddenly a gust of wind came from the streets and a small cloud of dust followed in a straight line past the shop. If he goes that fast, how can he find you? Tenten smiled. They all knew he was searching for her and found it quite amusing as he passed them several times on the street already. Should I go get him? We are done anyway now, Sakura. I've given your name for the dress deliverer. They should have it ready in a week. Hinata gave them all a nod while she stood up and left them to chat a bit at the table. Oh wait, there is something else we need to talk about, Hinata. Sakura grabbed her arm and pulled her down again. We need to get you a bachelor party, Sakura said with an evil grin. Hinata thought about it for a moment and nodded. I'll let the three of you handle that. Now I need to find Naruto before he knocks down a building or something. She smiled and left some money for the tea and cake they had. She walked outside and jumped up to the top of the building next to her as it was one of the highest in the area. After a second that she was standing, she saw a dust line going through the city and smiled before she vanished into thin air. Come on, where is she? Naruto was about to give up when suddenly he sensed a familiar aroma. He turned around a corner and followed the scent. Suddenly, in a vague blur, he thought he saw Hinata sitting on a bench smiling at him. He tried to stop as good as possible. He turned to his side and forced his left hand into the ground to decrease his speed. After a few blocks he finally stopped and turned around. A long small ravine that was about 1 meter deep from where he stood. All eyes were pointed to him and he looked around him for a bit. Suddenly he remembered one of his new techniques that he learned from Jiraiya. Naruto formed a few seals and whispered, "Rock bend technique," while he s his hands to the ground, infusing it with chakra. The ground around the small ravine rose up and fell down on it, closing it. After a few seconds nobody could even see anything out of it except a normal street. He looked up and saw a happy-looking Hinata walking up to him waving. He jumped up and rushed to her and caught her while spinning around. Finally, where were you all day? Naruto looked at her and she just smiled. You do know that you passed me right on the street several times, do you? She gave him a wink and freed herself from his grasp as she grabbed his left arm and pulled him along. I had to do some girls' stuff, was all she said, and Naruto surrendered and followed his arm. 27 days later, Naruto walked into the room with a few bottles of sake and some coke. They finally convinced Lee that he couldn't drink after at his 21st birthday, where they filmed him after he took 1 cup of sake. He was shocked and helped the bar owner build a completely new bar and apologized every day for a month. Gaara and Kankuro were on a diplomatic mission. The newest clan leader in Konoha was getting married. The whole night was filled with drinks, stories and laughter. The next morning they woke up scattered across the living room, most of them with a giant headache. Sakura picked Hinata up for her party and when they went into town she blindfolded her. They walked for a while and finally came to a building. They walked in and went down some stairs before they removed the blindfold. Hinata looked around and saw that they even got her sister and Temari, Shikamaru's girlfriend, over from Suna. There were bottles of sake on the table and Tsunade sat in a corner with an already empty bottle next to her, smiling broadly. They talked about boys and discovered that Temari was thinking about moving to Konoha soon and live with Shikamaru. Kurenai and Asuma finally confessed to each other and many other things. Somewhere halfway they all somehow conjured gifts for Hinata and put them down on the table lined up for Hinata. First she got a complete tea set with a flowery pattern from Ino. Tenten's gift was next and it contained a book on how to keep your weapons in perfect shape and a small kunai letter opener. It had a simple green with white stripes pattern and a red ribbon around the upper right corner. When she removed the wrapping it revealed a black book with a small envelope in front of it. She laid the book down and opened the envelope. Dear Hinata, you will enter a new part of your life where many changes will be made, some good some bad. There will be rough times but you have found the man of your dreams and he will give support. Your relation will be the center of your life and your happiness will be a priority. To help you with this is this little book. Hokage Tsunade. P.S. Naruto will be happy with it as well. Thank you Hokage-sama. Hinata smiled as she put down the letter and grabbed the book. Tsunade smiled and replied, just read the book dear, I'm sure he'll like it as well, with a smile. Hinata looked at the book. It was completely black and had nothing written on it on any of the sides. She opened it and after reading the letter she blushed again, throwing it on the table and Tenten, who couldn't wait again, grabbed the book and opened it. She read the letter and an evil grin crossed her face. She went off it quickly and the grin grew darker by the minute. Hokage-sama, I didn't knew you had it in you, she laughed before the book went around the group and finally Kurenai gave Tsunade a look before she gave it back to Hinata who put it with the rest of the gifts. They continued the party chatting about the guys and talking about the wedding. Late on the evening they left and Hinata found out that they were in the basement of Ino. Naruto woke up, he saw Shikamaru nod at him before he left the room, he stood up and looked around, Gaara and Kankuro were already gone and so was Lee. Choji, Neji Konohamaru, Shino and Kiba were still randomly sleeping in the room. He fell down on the couch again while he grabbed his head. A searing pain went off his head as he lay there, not remembering the end of the last night. He lay there for some time until Kiba woke up growling about his headache. He called Akamaru from the garden and left after greeting Naruto. Hinata woke up shortly after, she looked down and smiled, soon they would be married, soon. They lay like that for several hours until Naruto's stomach growled loudly. He looked up and smiled. Shall we get something to eat then? She nodded and they went down together. After lunch they told each other of the night before but Hinata didn't told him about the two special gifts. That night they ate at his favorite ramen stand and they went to the cinema and watched a random movie. At the end of the day he took her up to the top of Hokage Mountain. Thank you, for coming into my life, he whispered into her ear when they watched the sunset. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.